Hey there team. So as I've been diving deep into Python lately, I think I saw Sea Monster. And when I saw the monster, this idea just clicked to me that using Python script in Next.js. I mean, who knew these two worked so well together? It's like chocolate and peanut butter but with coding. So with this video, I wanted to just share with you this knowledge which I came across. Hope you guys enjoy. Before moving to the coding part of the video, let us visualize what is going on. So we'll be using a framework called Next.js, and inside that, the Node.js part we'll be using, and we'll be communicating with the terminal via the child process. So we'll be sending text to the terminal via the child process. We'll be in the terminal. We'll be activating the Python environment, and we'll also be sending the text that is to be translated, and we'll be capturing this text in Python using something called sys.argv with a V. We'll be capturing that text, and using one of the packages of Python, we'll be translating the text to the desired language, which is Dutch for this mini project in here. So that translated text again will be sending to the terminal via sys.argv, and then that translated text will be getting it back using a callback function of this child process, and we'll be displaying it to the front end. Now this might seem a bit complex, but trust me, it is very easy and will be much more clear when we actually start coding. So let's move to the coding side. So now let me show you how this child process actually works in Node.js. So in here, we have child process gives us three things, which is exec, spawn, and fork. I will go through all of this one by one, but we'll be using only one. And for all of you non-aficionados out there, you can just skip this part of the video. This is just for showing you how each one of these works. So now first let's take in exec's example. So let me show you. So this is how you create an exec function. So in the exec, you provided a command line argument for the terminal, and you also have a callback function which gets the error, the output of whatever we are passing here, and if any errors occurs here, we can get that value with the stderr parameter. So in here, if I save this now, and if I wait in here, I get how are you, and this it logs it out twice just because how Next.js works. That's why it's logging it out twice, but that won't be a problem. So in here, whatever bash command you provided here will be reflected in here. So if I say ls, if you all know what ls means, it should give me a list of files in here. So if I save that out, I get a list of all the files in this directory. So app, Next.js, env.dts, all that in here. I could also create a file if I want. So let's call it translate.txt, and if I save, I should get a text in here called translate.txt. So this is basically how exec works. We use exec for generally small processes, which doesn't take too much of computing power, and it is important to note that it works in the same process. So if you consider this as a terminal, it actually runs this process in the same terminal, whereas spawn and fork runs the process in another terminal. Just think of processes as terminals basically, and exec executes this process in the same terminal, whereas spawn and fork in another terminal. Now if we use it, it won't open a new terminal for us. This is just for understanding purposes. Okay, so that's how exec works. Let me comment this out now. Now let's move on to the spawn method. So for the spawn method is a little bit different. In this, what is happening is we create an object with the spawn method, and inside the spawn method, it receives two arguments, which is basically the first command line argument and a list of arguments passed to it. Whereas in here, you could just give it in one single argument. In here, you have to separate it in this way. The first one is echo, and if you want to pass in more arguments, you'll have to give it in a list of in a list, yeah. And this has a couple of event listeners, so for the output, for the error, and once this finishes. So this is on std out, std er, and once it finishes, we can log out with what code it exited out. So if I again save this, I should get a similar output. So again, std how are you, and this doesn't run because there's no error, and it closes out with the 0 code. So if you wanted again a similar example to the one which I showed previously, I could give, if I cancel this out and just give ls, again it should give me a list of files in here. Yeah, so it gave me a list of files here, and I could create a new file again. So touch, and this time I cannot pass in the same way. I'll have to give it another inside. I have to pass it inside this list. So if I save that, okay, let me actually name it translate2.txt so that you can see the difference. Yeah, so I get a new file here called translate2.txt. Now we use spawn for long processes, like the processes which take more computing power. We use that in the spawn method, and it runs on a different terminal, like in a different child process. So that's basically what spawn is. I'll comment this out, and let's move on to fork. So the fork method is similar to the spawn method, and the only difference is we have to give it the path to where the script exists and some arguments to give to the process in this. So this fork basically creates a new process to us and executes that process in the script which is mentioned here. So if I save this, I should be getting an error now because this script does not exist. So if I go to new file and create that file echo.ts, and in here if I give process.send, and because we are using TypeScript, I'll have to give question mark dot. So this will basically send the child, it will send the data to the parent process. So in here I can give process dot arg to actually get the values, and I'll slice it up. So 2, so how are you, 3 arguments, so it's slice 2, and I'll also join it and with the space in here. So if I save this and if I save this as well, I should be getting a how are you here. Yeah, right here. Yeah, so that's basically how fork works. So this is used for very large processes, and if you want to execute a script in a desired, like in a different location, like echo.ts, like the script. So that's basically how fork works. So we'll be using exec for this example, for this project. So let's actually move to the implementation of the project. Let's create a component called user inputs, because we'll be having states, and in order to have states, you'll have to convert it into a client side component. So in here, in the root, I'll create a folder called components, and inside here I can create a new file called user inputs.tsx. I'll paste in the code here. This is basically, we have a form, we have an input, we have a button translate, and we also have a on submit function. We have a couple of states to track those values. Save. I'll import this, save that. Let me show you what is going on in here. So I'll resize all this. So yeah, so this is what we have here. So this is basically let me actually close all this. I'll increase the font as well. I forgot to increase the font, and I'll close that. Okay, hopefully this is more clear. So okay, so we have an input, we have a button, and we have a function for handling the backend request. So API translate. If I go back here, and this shouldn't be API, this should be translate. So as we're using Next.js 14, Next.js 13.4, I think it is now. So in that, the way you create an API route is under app, you have a folder called translate, and in there you create a file called route.ts. Let me show what it is. So basically a get request with giving us a response of hello. So if I save this and if I go here to translate, should be getting hello. Yeah, so exactly what I wanted. So we'll change this now to a post, because we'll be sending a text here, post request, and we'll be receiving a text here called const. We'll destructure it, text from we'll await it first, request.json. If I go back here, page.tsx, and I just copy out this and go back to route, I'll paste it in here, uncomment it out, and instead of creating a file called translate.txt, I'll give it template literal, and I'll just pass in the text. So text. Now let's check whether this is working. So if I open my terminal and if I hit ls here and hit translate, it should give me a list of files. So our backend and front end is connected. Okay, so now I think we can move to the Python part, and towards the end we can actually give it the exec which is required. So this is just for showing you how it, like, whether the thing works or not. Now let us move on to the Python part and create a virtual environment. So let me close all this, expand this. Yeah, so let's go to another instance of terminal. I have one opened here. You can create a new one if you don't have it opened. So in here I'll give Python 3 and I'll give it the M flag. So this is how you create a virtual environment, venv, and give the name of the virtual environment. So in my case I'll give it as vir-env. If I hit enter, I should be getting a folder called vir-env. So we basically create a virtual environment to basically separate out our projects. Think of it as how package.json works. So each project has its own dependencies. Same way, a Python project will have its own packages. So each project is different from one another. So we create a virtual environment to separate out to avoid conflicts basically. Instead of globally installing each packages in a computer, we consolidate it into a separate virtual environments. So now in order to activate it, you type in source, the name of the virtual environment, so vir-env, then bin, and then activate. If I hit enter, and if you see this here inside the brackets vir-env, that means you're inside your virtual environment. So we basically went to vir-env, bin, and activate. Okay, so now let me create a new file called translate.py, and in here we can start writing our script. So the dependencies which we'll be needing are Google Trans. So let me go to Mozilla. I'll open a new one and I'll say pip install Google Trans alpha. We are using alpha because as of the recording of this video, pip Google Trans version 3 doesn't work. I get errors basically. So this was a solution which I found. So this is the package which we need. So if you can see, it's 3.1.0A0. So if I hit Control V here, hit enter, it should install all the dependencies for us. Okay. Now let us create a requirements file which will have all the dependencies of the virtual environment. So pip freeze, and that sign, I call it a crocodile sign, requirement.txt, hit enter, and if you go to this requirement.txt file, you'll have all the dependencies of your project. Actually, I'll rename this to requirements.txt so that I get all that highlighting. Okay, yeah, now we can start coding. So if I'll import sys This is for basically getting the command line arguments. And from Google Trans import translator. So I misspelled it, Google Trans. Okay, and we'll create an object called translator and give it brackets. I won't forget the brackets. I'll hit save. Here, let me just cross this out. Okay, and if I type, let me show you what we receive from sys.argv, and if I save this, it's not running. Why is it not running? You trigger formatting, or would you like to no. Okay, yeah, so in order to actually launch this file, I mean, you'll have to, it doesn't work, it doesn't have that hot refresh. I was just saving it. So it's Python 3 translate.py. If I hit enter, I get the name of the file. So sys.arg basically gives all the arguments that you pass to it. So if I say Python translate.py hello, if you see in here, you get two arguments now, translate.py and hello, inside a list. So that's basically how this works. So now let me say user text. This is basically from what we'll be sending from node, will be the text that is to be translated. So this, with that we can access it. So arg1. So if and next we'll get a result, translator dot translate user text. Is that what I want? Dest en. Okay. I want the destination to be NL. So this is NL is basically the language Dutch. Translate to Dutch. Yeah, good job, AWS. So this will be an English letter, and the destination will be, destination is what language you want to translate it to. So NL is Dutch. You can look their docs, they have all the list of all the languages. Now let me print result.txt and see what happens. So instead of user text, I'll just give hello. Actually, you know what, I'll give it a user text only. I'll give user text. I'll try. So Python translate py hello. If I give, hit enter, I should give hello. Okay, I'll give a better word. So let's say cake. So I should give, so tart. I hope that's correct in Dutch. So cake stands for tart. So this is basically getting the the second argument in the arg. So this is 0, translate.py is 0, cake is 1. So we access the cake, put it into user text, and you get we get the result with the result.txt. Now we can print out the sys.argv2. This is basically for the Node.js part. We send it the translated text. If I hit enter, if I hit enter, index out of range. Let's see what the problem is. If I just, okay, we get 2, and we are accessing the second argument, which is not there yet. Okay, for now let's keep it as 2. I know I'm getting an error. That'll be fixed if I go back to the route here. So in here, let us start implementing the correct values. So exec, and inside it I'll give it source var env /bin/activate. This is for actually launching our virtual environment, and we'll give and we also have to execute the file. So python 3 translate.py, and I'll also have to give in the text. So in here I can give text, and let us give a callback function now. So callback functions are error, std out, and stder, and yep, let us create a curly braces and if statement. So if there is an error, let's console log out the error. So let us keep this error, and I should probably disable AWS because it's starting to be a nuisance. And then set if, and I'll also give a, let's say, let me create another constant called translate text. This will not be a constant, this will be a let, because we'll be changing it. Let, and here I can just translate text std out, and okay, so, and I can also give it the translated x text, and let's try whether everything works. So if I should be getting an error, and I'll solve it shortly. Let's see. So hello, and I get an error. Let me refresh this. So hello, hit enter, post, let's see, post the request, we get hello, response is nothing. That's because we'll have to actually, while we send this text, this while this is executing, this doesn't wait for the processes to actually complete, because if you go here, all the steps takes a couple of time to actually execute, and this, as soon as I hit translate, it's basically just before sending, like before us receiving the std out and assigning it to translate text, it's sending it in the empty string. So in order to avoid that, what you can do is we'll const, we'll create a new, let's call it translated text. Yeah, translated text. Yeah, next time I'm disabling AWS, it's being a bother now. Okay, and this will be we'll make it this into a promise. So new promise resolve. Okay, I hope I don't get any bracket issues. Stop it. Okay, so curly braces, and in here I can just cut this out, put it in here, and instead of consoling out the error, if we get an error, I'll reject the error, and this doesn't exist anymore. So we can resolve it with std out. So we'll be getting std out. Let me see where the bracketing errors are. This should be this thing. Okay, and then let us create a new constant called translated text, and we'll await it. Translated text promise, copy this, paste it out here, save it here, and now if I close all this, let's cross our fingers, and at least I'll cross my fingers and hit translate, and I get nothing, and I got an error, which is to be expected. See again what the problem is. Hello, translate, there was a server error, request was correct, response no, nothing. Okay, let me check where I went wrong. So Next.js translated x. Let's go to translate.py and check what's happening here. I'll go open my terminal. I'll just launch the file translate.txt. It's out of range. Okay, I see what the problem is. Let me just see. Sys dot arg dot append, and I'll append the result. So result dot text. So let's just mimic what we are doing in the route.ts. So basically we are executing the file. So if I go back here, this activates it, and this is the part which executes the file. So python 3 translate.3y, and we give it some value here. So let's say how are you, hit enter, and it gives me how is het, and basically Google Trans figures out the spacing and all that jazz. So what we were doing is, before actually appending the result to sys.argv, we were sending it, so we were getting an out of bound error. That was the problem. So now if I go back here, let me make sure I've saved everything. Let me refresh this. Let me close this out. Let's say how are you. If I hit translate, I get the value R. Let me check again. How are you? Translate. Let me just go back here. Ensure that this is in double quotes. Let's refresh this, and how are you? Translate. Yeah, so the problem is double quotes. You have to put it in double quotes if it's dynamic. So yeah, so with that we've learned how to actually incorporate Python script to Next.js. That's all. If you have any questions for me, you can ask me in the comment section below, or you can ask me on Twitter. If you like the video, like it. If you dislike the video, dislike it. Up to you.